Hey everyone, Michael Scott, scottm Photo. Thought I'd talk a little bit about why I like to shoot in manual mode, but before I get into that, I thought I'd talk about what the different modes are. I think most people are familiar with auto or program mode, depending on the camera that you have. It may not say program mode, but rather just auto mode. And what that does is that really allows the camera to control all aspects of your shutter speed, your aperture, and your ISO settings. So that might be good for a novice or just some general picture taking. I mean, for the most part, if you're out just as a tourist and you're taking some pictures, you get good results with it, especially if it's in a sunny day. So I don't think there's any real big issue with that. However, if you're looking to improve your photography, certainly if you're a new photographer, I think that getting off of the auto and program modes is certainly the way to go. But the other modes are the shutter priority, which basically allows you to control your shutter. So, and that might be handy if maybe you were trying to capture movement in running water and you needed to have a certain shutter speed for that. Or you're maybe shooting your son or daughter's football game and you want to freeze more of the motion and get less blur in the image. You might want to control your shutter speed. So that gives you the option to basically set your shutter speed, and then the aperture and the ISO settings are based on your camera setup or how you just allows the camera to control the other settings. The other mode is the aperture mode, and aperture mode basically allows you to control your aperture, but it's not a little bit more simple than that. But basically, the camera controls everything else, but you control the aperture. And why would you want to do that? And that might be, really it's about depth of field. And if you don't understand depth of field, it's basically how much of the image is in focus. So knowing a little bit about the exposure triangle certainly helps. And that's going to be more of the reason why I shoot on manual mode, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. But so that aperture, maybe you might want to, you're shooting a group of family members or people, and you've kind of got a couple different rows of people in line, and you're noticing that when you take the picture that the front, you're focusing on the person in the front and they're sharp, but the folks in the back are not sharp. And so your depth of field is too shallow because your camera is on auto mode. So you could select aperture priority and basically select the appropriate aperture so that you get everything in focus. And the other settings of the camera would be controlled by the camera. Basically, to select the modes, you hit the mode button. This is a Nikon, so just by hitting the mode button, I can scroll through the different settings. But to select aperture, it's marked by A, and shutter is marked by S. Pretty simple, Nikon and Sony. Canon's a little different. The shutter priority is TV, and the aperture priority is AV on the camera. If you're new to photography and you're looking to improve your photography skills, I recommend you switch to manual mode. Get off the auto settings and the program settings. There's nothing wrong with using shutter or aperture priority, but I think if you really don't understand the exposure triangle, that's where I really recommend manual mode. Put your camera on manual mode, and it may seem painful in the beginning, but it's really not. You'll start to learn the relationships between exposure, between shutter speed and aperture, and your ISO, and how they affect your image. And that, I think, is what really kicks off the beginning of making better photos. So that's why I really recommend manual mode, and certainly for new photographers. Now, I stay in manual mode. I seldomly use aperture priority or shutter priority, but I do, and I will use those modes. But it really depends on what I'm doing with the camera. But as a landscape photographer, I mostly stay in manual. And the reason for that is because it allows me to have full control over the camera. Well, even if you're a hobbyist, you can still benefit from switching the camera to manual mode because, like I mentioned earlier, it'll help you understand your settings better in the camera and how that actually affects the photo. And a good example of a hobbyist, you're taking pictures and you get them back, and maybe you're getting ready to upload them to Instagram, and you're looking at the photos, and there's motion blur in them, there's depth of field issues, and as a hobbyist, you may not understand why that's happening and how to correct it. So shooting in manual mode again, gives you an idea of what you're doing with the camera and your settings and how they affect the image. And what that can do is that just improves your overall photography. Another thing I recommend is really using your histogram. When you're in manual mode, your histogram is really your friend. And using the histogram, what that does is that really allows you to kind of have full control over that histogram. And you can shoot to the right, shoot to the left. You can adjust your exposure to precisely dial in that histogram so that you get the exact exposure that you're looking for. And that is certainly another reason to stay in manual mode. As a landscape photographer, I really recommend staying in manual mode at least 90% of the time. I mean, I think when you're out shooting and you're in manual mode and you have complete control of your camera, it just becomes second nature to you. It's not, you don't even really think about it. I mean, I don't just get out there on the scene and think, oh, am I going to shoot an aperture or shutter priority today? It's not like that. It's once you go to manual, you pretty much stay there. But like I said earlier, there are times when I do use shutter priority, and it really depends. But for the landscape images that I take when I've got my camera on a tripod and I'm really dialing in a composition, I want full control over every aspect of that exposure triangle so that I can capture the image that I want the way that I want it. And I think that's what's important, at least for me anyway. So what's the takeaway? Well, if you're a new photographer, give manual a try. Even if you have a point and shoot, if the camera will allow you to put it in manual mode or control your shutter, aperture, and ISO, use your light meter on the inside of the camera to dial in that exposure. Get familiar with those settings, and you'll start to understand the relationship that shutter speed, aperture, and ISO has on your image and how it affects the final version of your image. Well, that's it. I hope you got something out of the video, but hey, if you liked the video, make sure you hit that like button. Consider subscribing, and leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought. And as always, if I don't see you down the road, maybe I'll see you on the trail.